Chapter 14. The familiar smell of leather and shoe polish greeted me like an old friend as I pushed open the bootery door. As much as Cookie's baking or Mother's perfume, the smells in the shoe store meant home and comfort. I found Dad in the back room restacking the few remaining boxes of new shoes to make room for all the old ones waiting to be repaired. Mother was up front, working on her yellow ledger sheets. From behind the curtain, I heard the front door open and Mother's voice saying, "Well, hello there." I couldn't hear the soft reply, but Mother said, "Came clear off, did it? Well, have a seat. Perhaps we can fix it right now. Give me the other shoe and we'll make sure that heel doesn't come off too. There are some magazines to look at while you wait." I pulled the curtain open just at my eye level. Sure enough, here came Mother with Billy Riggs's shoes. Not only that, I heard her say, "We've been expecting to see you at the house, Billy." I strained to hear him. "I keep forgetting about that platter, ma'am." I wondered who taught him to say ma'am. "No, I mean to see old Wolf." Why couldn't we just leave things as they were? Dad turned Billy's sad sack shoe over in his hands and shook his head. I could see that reattaching the rundown heel to a sole that had a hole the size of Texas would not help much. "Why don't you go out and visit with your friend?" Mother said. "He's not my friend," I said between clenched teeth. But I went. Billy sat on the bench trying to hide his feet under it. A big toe poked out through a hole in his sock. "Hi," I said, standing behind the counter as though I owned the place. "Hi." He kept his eyes on a magazine, turning pages too fast to read anything. "Cat got your tongue?" I finally said. "Got yours?" Well, this was some visit. Billy concentrated on a full page aircraft company advertisement. I recognized the pictured airplane by the double tail. Not many planes had two rudders. "That's the best airplane there is," I said, forgetting myself and coming around the counter. "The B-24 Liberator." "It is not." "Oh no? What's better?" I knew the B-24. He didn't have anything on me just because he was a boy and drew war pictures all the time. B-17 for one. The Flying Fortress. Now that's a plane. "This one goes faster," I said, poking my finger at the page. "It's a box. Look at it. Clunky." "And it goes farther," I said, ignoring him, "and carries more bombs than your precious fortress. Looks like an elephant with ears on the wrong end. Besides, the 17s do all the important stuff." "They do not." I stomped over to Dad's map. Before I knew it, I was jabbing at the map like a school teacher, pointing to places B-24s had flown into battle, some on every front. I knew these places. I had pasted news clippings about them in the scrapbook I was making for Jeff. "Midway Island, between Hawaii and Japan," I announced. "Obvious why we needed that, isn't it?" I moved back and forth across the map. "Ploesti, where Hitler keeps his oil supply. He can't run his ships without oil, can he?" "The illusions. So the Japanese can't attack us from there." I kept going. "Solomon Islands. Wake—" I must say, Billy showed more interest than Maria had. He was standing beside me now with his mouth open. But all he said was, "Strange map." Summer came on its best behavior, saving us the trouble of holding the hose. Days were hot, but night rains cooled the gardens. I knew what Mrs. Burt would have said if she'd been there. No hand but God's could water a garden so well. Still, the young sprouts were working hard. Nature had not found a way to pull weeds, pluck off bugs, or pick the vegetables. If Mrs. Burt could have seen us, she'd have been proud. The front door stood open as I straightened the living room one drizzly day. I pushed the carpet sweeper and breathed in the damp morning air. Outside, the rain fell fine as mist, slanting in under the roof to wet a strip of porch. Was it raining where Jeff was? Was it morning or was it night? "Remember when we rode in the rain, Jeff? Me on the handlebars, you pedaling through the puddles? You said, 'Don't tell Mom.'" Sometimes I remembered him so well I spoke out loud like that. Other times I'd forget what he looked like. The picture I dusted every week didn't help. The uniform looked strange. The face, nearly covered by the bill of an officer's cap, was too old to be Jeff's. I tried to hear him calling me Squirt, but no sound came with the memory. Did I have a brother? As if to answer my question, the postman rattled the screen door, his way of announcing that he'd pulled a letter from overseas out of his worn brown pouch. I dropped the handle of the sweeper and ran to the door. Morning, Teresa, he said through the screen. Raindrops dripped from his uniform cap. Oh, thank you, Mr. Lewis, I said as I pushed the screen door open and reached for the mail. Jeff's letter was on top. His letters often came in bunches after a long stretch of none at all. Today there was only one. Yes, I whooped out the address on the envelope. Miss Teresa Marks, Shady Grove, Kansas, USA. I sat in Dad's armchair, my feet dangling over one side. Dear Teresa, whoa, you're full of questions. Thanks for your letter. I am lucky that you and the folks write. Some guys don't get mail at all. No, you're busy, especially if you are tending Tom Bert's garden. Keep up the good work, because what you do counts. That answers your first question. Of course, it's up to Tom Bert and Dad, but I hope they didn't plow it under. Second question, yes, I guess you and Dad are the duelers now. Whose side is Mom on? Your third question is hard to answer. What's it like to be flying up there? It's noisy, bumpy, freezing cold, even with our electric flying suits. But it makes me feel free, like I'm sledding over air. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be Santa Claus. Then I found out there were even better things to fly than sleighs. Fourth, there isn't much time to be scared. What I do is more like work than fighting. We're up there for hours at a time. Boring sometimes, but always busy. We have lunch out of a box and just keep on flying. What I wouldn't give for one of your tomatoes up there, Squirt. Love, Jeff. P.S. By the way, exactly what is that secret weapon and how does it work? You never told me. I'd had a few days of peace without Billy. He still hadn't taken Mother up on her invitation. Dad had brought his shoes out from the Bootery's back room with brand new heels, new half soles and polish that made them look as good as rundown shoes could look. Billy's mouth had dropped open and scared look had crossed his face. But he'd relaxed when Dad said, "On the house for saving old Wolf. You come see him now." I winced. Billy had found the dog. He hadn't exactly saved him. We'd all done that, and I had been the one to feed him and walk him once his leg was healed. We couldn't send him away again after he had come all that way to get home to the Berts. We had just started out one morning, earlier than usual, when old Wolf began to whine and strain at the leash. I pulled back, but he stripped the leash out of my hand and went darting across the street, right into the arms of you know who. "Hey, old boy, where you been?" I heard Billy say as he rubbed the dog's head. Well, where did Billy think he had been? I put my hands on my hips and stared. It was plain the dog adored Billy. "Go on, dog," Billy said, and pointed across at me. "Go for your walk." Old Wolf refused. Billy took him by the collar and led him back. "There you go, boy." He gave me the leash, but Old Wolf wasn't going anywhere without Billy. We ended up walking him together. Billy was barefoot, even though the sidewalks would soon be blistering. "Where's your shoes?" I asked him. "Saving 'em," he said. "They're too good to wear now." I saw him after that, but nothing regular. That was fine with me. I had other things to think about. This was the first summer I had been allowed to stay home all by myself. I liked the freedom, being trusted with it. I had lots to do: tidy up the house, work in the Bert's garden, brush and walk old Wolf, write to Jeff, read in the mulberry tree, roller skate, and ride my bike. I wrote Penny postcards to Mrs. Burt telling her what flowers were blooming in her yard and what was turning ripe in the garden. She wrote to tell us how Mr. Burt was doing. Some days Maria and I walked to town for a popsicle or to read the funny books at Rexel if the druggist wasn't looking. Other days I helped her take care of her baby brothers, but I didn't stay long. Maria's house smelled like wet diapers and spit up milk. Evenings I had some time in our own garden with Dad when he got home from work. We agreed, though, hands off each other's tomatoes. "A duel's a duel," we said. When we walked over to inspect the Burt's garden, I could tell Dad was amazed. "But those tomatoes," he'd say, shaking his head. "Pity." "Pity you're going to lose," I'd answer, and we'd walk back home, his big hand cradling the back of my neck. The workroom off our kitchen became the young sprouts' headquarters. Thick leaves of mulberry outside the window and a row of elms shading the roof made this the coolest room in summer. Mother kept an old coffee can on the shelf. Miraculously, it sprouted new cookies each time we picked it clean. When school had been out for several weeks, I began to wonder where Billy was. Not that I cared, but old Wolf would whine and paw the ground, looking for him whenever he went out. Then, early one morning when I was in the garden, up popped Billy and scared the living daylights out of me. "What the Sam Hill are you doing?" he said. That must have been his pop's kind of talk. I hadn't seen him coming. I was using the secret weapon. New blossoms were coming on all the time, and I had to do this when no one was around, since it was my secret and Dad's. I thought better of saying it was none of his beeswax. Nothing, I said, but he already seen. You gotta do this whole row clear to the alley? Yes. Here. To my amazement, he held out his hands. I'll do some. He worked and I watched, and I told him I would wring his neck if he told anyone. "'Twouldn't matter," he said. "This ain't gonna help." "How do you know?" "Just know. My grandma had tomatoes. She didn't do this. Hers were huge." "Then why are you helping?" "Just am." I was determined not to argue with Billy. There'd be no winning. I had an idea. "If you like to work in the garden," I began. "Didn't say I liked it." He left as abruptly as he had come. "Thank you," I called to his back. He turned his head, hunched a shoulder, and walked on. I was sure the secret was safe with Billy. He seldom talked to anyone.